Hey everyone, welcome to the Cyberattack YouTube channel. In this video I'm going to discuss the JBS meatpacking plant hack. As you know, if you've been watching the news at all, there's been just a rash of ransomware attacks lately, and this is just another one of the line. This is one that was pretty significant though, so I think it's worth discussing. So my background, I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO, at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. I hold a BS in Computer Science, a Master of Business Administration. I've got 3 certifications active: the CISSP, the GIAC GCED, and the GIAC GSEC certifications. Just some background about JBS. JBS is the world's largest meat supplier. I had no clue about this until the ransomware attack, but they're definitely the world's largest meat supplier based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. They have 250,000 employees in 15 countries, including in a few countries that we're going to talk about here shortly: the US, Australia, and Canada. And they own many well-known subsidiaries, including Pilgrim's Pride, so they're really just an umbrella company for a lot of other significant meat-related companies. So here's a timeline. On June 1st, the JBS operations halted, including servers in North America and Australia due to infection. And then the next day, the Wall Street Journal basically reported that pressure on the food supply chain was already increasing because of the JBS outage. As you know, because of the events of last year, supply chains were already just really impacted, and so this just ratcheted the pressure on the food supply chain. Facilities in 6 U.S. states, including Colorado, Iowa, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Nebraska, and Texas, were among those taken offline because of the ransomware infection. On June 2nd, it came out from the Wall Street Journal that a ransomware attack is what caused JBS to have to shut down those few plants. And then a week later, JBS announced they paid an $11 million ransom to further limit disruption. What's really fascinating about this, and it just continues throughout the ransomware discussion, is at what point do you decide, okay, I'm not going to pay the ransom, because the ransoms are incentivizing the bad guys to just continue hacking other people because they know they can just get more money and more money and more money. The trouble is that with many of these companies, they don't have good enough security in place, so unless they pay the ransom, they're going to go out of business, or they're going to be out weeks of revenue, so they choose to pay the ransom because it's the lesser of the two evils. So yeah, keep that in mind when you're considering ransomware, because it's just a fascinating discussion to think about the ethics behind paying the ransom and not paying the ransom, and whether that ethical discussion is just moot. Is it? In all practicality, if you're under the gun, if your business is about to shut down or take a huge revenue hit, I think at that point, maybe it becomes a cost-benefit analysis. So the hacking group that conducted the JBS hack is known as REvil. That's REvil. And they're basically just a ransomware gang. And so since the JBS hack, since they got their $11 million out of JBS, they've been targeting customers of a company named Kaseya, and specifically VSA software customers, and even more specifically, managed service providers of Kaseya VSS. So effectively, the managed service providers provide IT services to companies, medium and small companies that can't afford a full-time IT staff. So typically, these managed service providers provide or use Kaseya VSA to manage the smaller companies. Well, the ransomware gangs know that if they can get to the Kaseya VSA managed service providers, they can then affect a ton of other companies beneath that MSP. And so effectively the MSP is like a keystone to getting to infect a bunch of other companies, who in turn the ransomware operators can ask for more money. So all this begs the question, what can you do to secure your network? The first recommendation I've got, it's the same recommendation that USCERT has, a recommendation that CISA has, is that of air gapping your backups and making sure that you restore data frequently. So taking backups is great, and that's certainly important. But one recommendation that even the FBI also has is air gapping your backups. So if your network over here gets infected, your backups, if they're sitting on your same network, it's very possible, and it's that much easier for the bad guys to get to your backups and encrypt them, thereby making your backups just ineffective. What you don't want to happen is having your backups on your network and then the day of the infection realizing, oh, the bad guys infected my backups too, so I'm out of luck. If you air gap your backups, then You've got effectively a separation between your production network and wherever you're storing your backups. So if you do have that infection, one thing you know is, okay, don't bring those backups onto your infected network. Instead, set up a secure network or a separate segment, restore your data and your systems there, and your backups aren't going to be infected there. Just as important, make sure you're testing your backups frequently, so restore data periodically to make sure your backups are valid and legit. Make sure you're investing in anti-malware clients and anti-malware software. So, definitely don't skimp on this, because there are definitely certain anti-malware and EDR, endpoint detection response clients, that are just, great pieces of software. Make sure you're investing there, but then also periodically audit your client configuration settings. That way you're making sure that, okay, if the vendor says, this is the best practice here, make sure that, in the case of an infection, you don't find out, oh, I'm running this really expensive, great anti-malware client, but hey, I forgot to turn on this setting. You don't want to find that out at the worst possible time. And this next point, I've spoken about this many times, but make sure you're restricting your egress traffic on your network. For all of us, it's like, likely religion that we restrict the inbound traffic that's coming into our network. But oftentimes with egress traffic, we just let whatever get out of our network. The danger with that is if you have a client that's infected with ransomware or a ransomware dropper, that client can then talk outbound to the ransomware command and control server, pull down, infected software, allow, the ransomware operators to get back in and, effectively bypass that layer of security. Well, if you're restricting egress traffic to only what needs to be, what's business necessary, that means if you do have a dropper somehow get on your network, that can talk outbound to the command and control system, and it can't bring down more malicious software. So there you're, effectively potentially stopping malware from getting onto your network via the firewall. The next point I have is that of multi-factor authentication. Make sure you've got MFA enabled wherever you can. What this does for you effectively is it hardens your authentication, and it means that the ransomware operators are that much going to have that much harder of a time getting a hold of one of your user accounts to leverage to get into your network. Next, make sure you're practicing defense in depth. So each of these items I'm mentioning, and there's certainly a lot more to talk about, but each of these items you have to consider a layer. So think about this security and the idea of like an onion or layers. And if you have good security starting at the outside and then all the way through, it makes it that much more difficult for your network to be infected. And let's say the worst case scenario, you do have a ransomware infection on your network. Let's say all of your layers are pretty strong. Maybe the infection is limited to just one segment of your network. Maybe that'll prevent your entire network from going down. Maybe that'll prevent your entire revenue stream from being impacted. So effectively, that could either stop a ransomware infection or mitigate it. And the last point is bring on a professional on your network. If you have revenue of any significance, consider investing in a professional to come in and measure your cybersecurity posture. And what this does basically is even if you are a cybersecurity professional through and through, it always helps to have another set of eyes to come in and take a look at your network, your systems, and to see, okay, well, maybe you're really strong at security, but look, it looks like you missed this point or this point. Maybe they find you're running SMB v1, or find, hey, you MFA'd all your accounts except for these, this handful. Why don't you take a look at that? And that may be worth the security. That may be worth the price you pay for the professional to say, okay, well, I pay them this amount, but they're increasing my security enough to where I can avoid a full-on ransomware infection. So just as a summary, ransomware attacks definitely show no sign of slowing. Again, if you look at the news every day, it seems like there's just frequently more and more companies being attacked. The Colonial Pipeline earlier this summer, then JBS, then Kaseya VSA customers. So, excuse me, it looks like ransomware attacks are just continuing to just accelerate. Implement defense in depth again. I mean, that's just, that'll help you to mitigate attacks, potentially stop them. If you do get attacked, if you do get infected, implementing defense in depth can probably limit the amount of damage your company incurs. And finally, consider that security is a continuous process. So think about security not as one discrete single event where you can just say, check the box. I've met all these these requirements right now, my company's good to go forward. With technology evolving, with IT evolving, with attackers evolving, security is a continuous process where you need to look through your entire cybersecurity posture, examine it, fix what's broken, and come back again to test, measure, remediate vulnerabilities, and just reiterate through that process over and over and over to make sure you stay in a secure place. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.